I think we said in the previous episode that God's self-description in verses 19, where he talks about, I will be gracious to whom I will be gracious, I will show mercy on whom I will show mercy. That's plainly an echo. I think Ben said this in the last episode of Exodus 3:14. But as it were, it's not as if the reason that there's a shift here is from what's happened in chapter 32. It's the golden calf. It's God is showing mercy on the Israelites after their sin, and it's not. We've talked a little bit about does God change? How can he be the same? How can he be in relationship and still not change? I think it's a very subtle way of understanding that this is not God changing. It's not God's personality changing. It's, as it were, our relation to God, our understanding of God is progressively revealed to us through the changes, through the actions and the decisions that we undertake. And I think it's a very important point. It preserves God's immutability, maybe his impassibility, his freedom from suffering, but it also explains how we can, as it were, enter into relationship with him.
Well, that's the concept of prayer, which is very difficult to understand on sort of the raw childish level, which is God is gumball machine, right? You put in your quarter and the gumball comes out. The idea of prayer that you're talking about is obviously a lot more meaningful, because it's really not about changing God's mind. It's about changing who you are, and thus God naturally responds to you differently because you're not the person that you were before you prayed. Mm-hmm. And the verb to pray in Hebrew is actually in the reflexive tense, right? Lahit palel, right? Which is supposed to, the idea is that it's supposed to be something that acts on you. The prayer is supposed to act on you. It's not supposed to be something where you're attempting to pry an answer out of God. Actually, one of my favorite, kind of dark headlines from The Onion is God answers prayers of paralyzed little boy, no, says God, right? Like, which is obviously incredibly dark and terrible, but also true, meaning like God does say no, but the idea is that the person he's saying no to might be a different person than the person he says yes to tomorrow, because you change yourself in order to be the person who deserves a different response from God.
And maybe that's the whole message of the construction of the tabernacle, that it's not something that, as it were, God does to the people, to the Israelites. It's not sort of God acting through miracles or even through revelation. The revelation is an enabling condition of that, but it's what the Israelites undertake together. It's what they do together.
To be able to receive
that ultimately transforms them into the people that God's called them to be.
Well, I think it certainly seems to me to be a productive way to consider prayer, and I really do believe that our capacity to think, and I'm thinking about this as an evolutionary biologist, actually emerged out of the domain of prayer, because thought seems to me to have a prayer-like structure. The first is, I have a problem that I need to solve. So that's like an admission of insufficiency. And the next is, the answer could make itself manifest. Now you might say, well, I'll think it up, but that's a pretty sad explanation. It's more like, no, you admit you have a problem, and then you open yourself up to a revelation. And then the revelation makes itself manifest. The thought appears. And it's just often, especially if it's a deep thought, and a deep new thought, it strikes you as a surprise, right? It's not like you predicted it. It springs itself on you as if it's something new.
Thinking and thanking are etymologically related.